Well, Apple's announced their brand new iPhone 12 and all the details are there for us to be discussed. We know the release date, the price, the different models. To go through all of that, we're joined by our resident Apple and app expert, Mike Boyd. How are you, Mike?
I'm good, Charlie. How are you?
I'm really well. iPhone 12. I understand you've got the iPhone 5 in your hand, so we can once again we can be reminded of what the square edge is all about.
Well, it was just a great. So you can just see it squared off there across the top, and it was just a great form factor. I mean, I only just pulled it out, a couple of hours ago, and just in your hand, it feels really solid. So yes, they've gone away from the curved edge of the old iPhone. The 10s and 11s, and I think this has been in since about the 8. So it's back to the square edge, which I think will be a big plus for people.
All 5G. You're an app developer as much as you are a follower of Apple News. What does that mean for apps?
Look, it'll mean for apps that you're going to have response times, data transmissions, and so forth are going to be a lot faster. But what everyone still has to remember is that a 5G compatible phone is actually only as good as the network it's attached to. So whether you're on Telstra, Optus, Vodafone, whichever network you're on, it'll really come down to how quickly those networks are making 5G available across the country.
The ability to go from 5G back to 4G back to 5G, that was an interesting point because at the moment 5G still chews a lot of battery power that we really don't accept being chewed. We want the fast speeds but not the lower battery time limits.
Look, that's right. And there was a really interesting piece in the presentation from Apple on Wednesday where they talked about the fact that in the US, 5G millimetre wave, which is a slightly different piece of spectrum, was available to Apple. Now, they made a very specific point about saying that was US only. So we're yet to see what that means when the device arrives here in a couple of weeks. But you're right. With that speed, comes battery degradation, and it's much the same as the faster you go in your car, the worse your fuel efficiency is. So we all want that speed, but it's that finding that balance between is 4G going to be enough for what we need day to day, and is 5G really going to be that sort of edge case scenario where just when we think we need a little bit of speed, we can have it.
Whenever Apple does the iPhone announcement, the devices are immediately compared to the competition, the Huawei's, the Samsungs, for example. And some of the things in the presentation, IP68, that's the first time I remember Apple has included that level of water and dust resistance. There's other features in there too that could arguably be compared to competitors and pointed out that competitors have those features first. Is it a case, in your view, that once you're sort of a rusted-on iOS customer, you don't really require the latest, the most advanced hardware features? You want good hardware features and enhancements, but you don't have to necessarily have them to convince you to make that purchase.
Look, that's exactly right. And just back to the IP68 point, I was funnily enough, I was at a device release for another manufacturer only the other day, and they too made a point of saying that their device was IP68. And when I heard both, I sort of went, that's really interesting. I've not heard that before. And all of a sudden, I now need to have an iPhone that's as water and dust resistant as, the garden lights in the garden, or it's quite interesting that they made that point. But back to your more recent question around, how much extra do you really think you need? I think we're getting to the point where we're getting to the top of that curve of back, as I said, when the old iPhone 5 came out, the first sort of square edge, that was a significant step up, and that was down here sort of in the curve. We're now right up here where the incremental benefits you're getting in actual hardware features really are, I think, mostly all around those cameras, and because there really is very little else that you're getting in terms of step change in performance improvements.
The camera benefits or improvements, we will find that out once everyone's had the opportunity to go and have a play with them and all those kinds of things. In your view, are there improvements you would like to see based on your camera use of previous iPhone devices?
Look, I think certainly the low light examples. I mean, anyone who's used a smartphone in low light knows that that really is the areas that can make or break and really set the men from the boys, so to speak, in terms of their capabilities. I think certainly the Pro models of the iPhone 12, so the Pro and the Pro Max, the majority of their announcement in the Apple event on Wednesday was all around their camera hardware. So everything from the ultra wide to the wide to the macro lenses to the LiDAR that they're now using, which then helps to provide capabilities around augmented reality. So they really are putting a lot in there. So I think to answer your question, we won't really know until we get our hands on the devices and start to have a proper play with them to really understand, where the gaps might be. But they certainly look very impressive.
A more personal question now: how many Apple adapters do you have in your home?
I can reach up here on my bench and I can pull down. Well, there's 3. Yeah. No, there's a 4th. there's plenty of them. So, look, I think, again, I heard someone this morning making the point that, look, you can take the adapter away, but that just means I've got to go and buy another one because the cable that comes with the iPhone 12 actually now has a USB-C adapter. So all of these adapters that I just showed you here, they're the old, original full-size USB. Now I've got to get an adapter that's got USB-C. So I've now got to go and buy another adapter. That's another lot of packaging, another lot of delivery. So I think I get where Apple's going in terms of off-the-shelf, out-of-the-box environmental concerns, but it sort of didn't quite make sense. And I think people will see through that pretty quickly.
I imagine the makers of supplementary power adapters would be quite pleased because all of a sudden they're going to have a whole bunch of potential customers.
Yes, and that was one of the other things. So they've got now the MagSafe capability on the back of the iPhone 12 for connectors. So whether it be and this is very much the same technology that is used if you've got an Apple Watch, the way that the charging sort of pad, if you like, clicks onto the back of the watch, and it's the same as if anyone who's had an old MacBook Pro, where the power cord has that sort of that magnetized clicking adapter. That's going to make a big difference in terms of the way that you're going to be able to now charge the device, but also mount it, whether it's in your car or on your desk or on your bike or whatever it is. And interestingly, I don't recall having heard Apple mention the name of a third-party supplier before, but they made mention of Belk, and I think it was in the presentation on Wednesday. So a lot of there seems to be a lot of changes coming within Apple, knowing that, as I said, they're getting to that sort of top of that curve where they need partners and partnerships to help them keep growing.
I'll get to you about I'll talk to you about the HomePod Mini in just a second. But final point on iPhone with the 12. Any sleeper announcements that you think we should know about before we finish talking about that one?
Look, interestingly, the presentation on Wednesday they revealed the iPhone 12 Mini, which is, for all intents and purposes, only a little bit bigger than it's sort of between. That's the iPhone 5, that's the iPhone XS. It's sort of in between those two. So, again, look, a good device. I mean, as you say, the iPhone 12 range, 5G across the range, the A14 Bionic chip across the range, the new OLED screen across the range. So if you're looking for a relatively small form factor, high-powered Apple device, the iPhone 12, I think, will be very, very popular. 5 new colours. Off the top of my head, I can't remember them, but I know there's a red, a green, and a blue in there, and I think there's a black and a silver. So again, there's just those extra little shifts of things that Apple are doing to push out their demand curve.
Be interesting to see what happens when it goes on sale October 23. The Pro and Pro Max will go on sale early in November. Very quickly, HomePod Mini. Tell us about your thoughts on that one. Do you have the current one?
Look, no, I'm not a HomePod. I'm not a HomePod fan. I mean, I've never actually seen one in anyone's home. I've never really heard of anyone having one. We've got a wired sound system in the house, which is fantastic. And I know plenty of people who have Sonos and have other devices. The HomePod Mini essentially is the HomePod itself, as you know, is sort of a 15 centimeter high sort of cylinder. The HomePod Mini now is sort of almost the size of a large sort of grapefruit. So it's this sort of circular shape. Lights on the top with a power play and pause and volume buttons. Look, I hate to say it, I think it's probably the last roll of the dice for the HomePod. I just can't see. Look, and maybe there are markets around the world where the HomePod's doing really well. Maybe it's a big seller in the US, but I just can't see it being going any further than where they are.
Yeah, Middle East, where they got some cash to throw around. Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe.
I've never seen one in a house either, and I've got plenty of rusted on Apple friends. So we'll wait and see what goes on with that one. That one's going to cost about, I think it was 150 either Australian or US.
149.
149, so much cheaper than the original HomePod. Mike Boyd, good to have a chat to you. Thanks for taking some time today, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Pleasure, Charlie. Talk to you soon.